the future is actually determining the past. There are things about that I'm not going to go into. We don't have time here because I've only got another half hour at best here before I have to go. But the future determines the past and the present. So for this reason, the quantum realm itself, and again, because our minds function, as David Bohm pointed out, and as many others have through the years, our electrical processes in the brain rely on quantum mechanics. So when you're also using that subatomic realm to set off a detonation chain of events, it is impossible, absolutely 100% impossible that that will not affect the thinking of people in the long run. Because quantum entanglement ensures that whatever happens to one particle, this is a definite fact of physics. There is not a single physicist that would disagree with what I have to say. Quantum entanglement ensures that one particle absolutely affects the other particle. What happens to one happens, a similar effect happens to another.
So can you just lay this out for me step by step? Because you're gonna talk for 30 minutes about quantum at this point, and I'm gonna get lost because I haven't caught up to the last point. So let me get the first point right first. A hydrogen bomb is set off by North Korea in 2017. It explodes in the ocean. No one is killed except the fishies, and ripple wave goes off for a measurable distance, tidal wave, whatever kind of wave, physically. That can be measured by satellites imaging and whatever else you have to measure that, analytical technology. But what about the quantum, the things that we can't analyze? Well, quantum speeds, the quantum particle, if I remember the CERN experiment correctly, it moves super fast. It travels from country to country in a millisecond. So wouldn't it, theoretically on that level then, wouldn't it affect everyone as soon as it exploded? Because those quantum particles are going for haywire. So they are. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. That's basically, you are correct in that. The science of it is a whole lot more complicated, and trying to condense it, to be honest with you, is tough, especially in the language we have, the language we use, is not up to the task of explaining the universe to us or to each other. The one universal language which seems to do that is mathematics, but it takes most people years, if not decades, to gain a good understanding of advanced mathematics in any way, shape, or form. So we're reduced to this language, if you like, to try and describe, to try and explain these complex phenomena. But by and large, you're correct, except there's no traveling involved. In fact, there's a brilliant theory that even Nick Bostrom and I were actually discussing some time ago. He's done a brilliant few papers. I was reading one of his last ones that he did on simulation theory. I don't know if you're familiar with Nick's work on that.
Yes.
Right. So the ideas that he has around this form of existence have evolved over time. So now he's kind of more similar to my line of thinking on this, and I hope I'm not miscategorizing that. But the beginnings of the universe, if they originated, as Lawrence Krauss suggests, in a quantum foam of sorts, then a singular particle, or a subatomic particle more correctly, gave rise to the entire universe itself. And we are all basically the same subatomic particle. Everything which is in existence is the same subatomic particle.
Very true.
Right? So whatever happens has reverberations. Whatever happens in one part of the universe does have reverberations in another part of the universe. And whatever we do or think or say more than likely has ramifications beyond our measurement because of the complexity, the infinite complexity of the universe at large.
So then I reverse that question and ask, does the quantum ripple effect of the bomb itself uh, affect how we think, what we do, and what we see?
I would say so. I would say so because it is unlikely that you could trigger the destabilization, which is basically what a nuclear explosion, after an implosion, you see an explosion. The the destabilization of that atomic structure reorganizes the matter of the universe fundamentally. That's what's going on with a nuclear device once it's detonated. So, again, for that not to have implications or ramifications, especially in terms of human thinking or the mental well-being of human beings, I think is ludicrous to suggest that that doesn't happen. And even if you don't want to consider it from those perspectives, at the very least, surely the the ideological position that drives someone to detonate a nuclear bomb, the willingness to destroy, as Oppenheimer noted, that behold, I have become death, the destroyer of worlds, right? That that mind that it must take to do that surely has an influence in the greater world at large as well, even just on a psychological or social level. So yeah, I can't see how it wouldn't have an effect, if you will, you know.
Yeah. Okay. And you being an intelligence, I don't want to ask you specifics, but could you confirm or deny the claims that the military, the world's military, is launching missiles at planets? Or launching satellite, more specifically, launching satellites at planets to explode like missiles, possibly for that intention. Have you read about this yet?
I can't say I have. Um,
I've read user claims. Like I'm an analyst myself. I don't give credit to it, but I just thought I'm thinking of that logic that we're using now in quantum theory, right? That ripple effect definitely has an effect on weak-minded people, weak-willed people who don't know how to put up a psychic shield and defend
mhm.
against that every day because it's a discipline. It's not given, like freedom is not given to you. You have to work at it every day, and you have to develop it. And unfortunately, there's like it seems like anti-freedom bombs going off, not only through propaganda, media advertisements, satanic symbolism in media, uh, in movies. The agenda being implemented, people moving into micro cities, as you suggested, like in Salt Lake City, Utah, and it goes like the agenda goes on. The people do not push away because they're comforted in by daddy to accept it and take it up the rear end. And it's going to take a Shays rebellion with the technology the army has now. To think of a rebellion is going to be ending up on the National Reserve of some farm in Oregon waiting for the FBI to come mace you. And that's all it's going to be. And the extent of government control where I live in New York is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. In the city, you have a police on every corner, riot gear, terrorism is up. They get sent on a mission for a political agenda, as always, to increase fear in people. And it's a very old game. I'm interested in the occult and learning new games. I'm wondering if I should join the Masons myself. I know it's an initiated body of knowledge you learn through allegorical plays. What's kind of cool is you get the value of the experience of going through that initiation, kind of adding a psychological value to oneself. but I'm psychologically strong enough to the degree where I feel like I don't need that at all. But I feel like I'm missing key research by not being a part of the boys club. So what do you think on societies, like if you should join them? If so, you would obviously join with good intentions. You can't demonize everything and just say, well, the history of the Masons is this and that, and it goes back to the Knights Templar, blah blah blah. At some point, it gets to the degree where you're just like, man, I want to join these people and know what they know. I wanna get in on the books. Let me have access to the library, and it's just like gets to that point. What do you say at that time?
What I have to say on this is controversial, and people would call it heretical in the conspiracy movement. But one of the great problems is that if someone was to ask me today, or I'm sure Michael Stern would probably say the same thing, or if you asked Mark Passio, he would say the same thing. If someone said to me today, why don't you come along and join our secret society or whatever, and it was the darker aspects of these occult secret societies, I wouldn't reject it out of hand.
Mm.
And if they said to me that the people of this earth deserved to perish in their own self-created nightmare, it's very, very hard to disagree with that.
Very true.
Okay, it's very hard. Like, even someone who is fully aware on the other side of the coin, okay, let's call it the lighter side, if you will, as opposed to the dark side, right? So the problem is that because people have been complicit in their own slavery, because people have been complicit in their own abandonment of self knowledge and self love, what has actually happened now is that even if you were to give them total freedom, and this is kind of what we were discussing on the podcast as well, if you gave people their absolute freedom today, the very first thing they would do is demand to be ruled over. That's the scariest thing about it all. So, with people who demand to be mollycoddled, it's very hard then to disagree with the people on the other side of the fence who say, well, see, we told you so, they are all morons, maybe they do deserve to die. Do you see what I'm saying? The argument is profoundly powerful. The counter to that argument, I would say, is that it smacks of intellectual arrogance. Okay, that's the thing, and I've tried to tell people this on my own channel as well. I've made several videos about this. It smacks of intellectual arrogance when you believe that you have the right to dictate life or death. See, that's the thing. And the worst thing you can do is to provide people sometimes with the very thing they ask for. That's not a good enough reason to say, okay, people should be ruled over. Just because they can't handle it right now doesn't mean that they can't become capable of handling it. So when it comes to these secret societies and these organizations or whatever else, it's no secret that I have had people come to me and say, would you like to be a part of this or would you like to be a part of that? And I've had to flatly refuse because I knew what their intentions were. Okay, so I'm not going to be a part of the tyranny, if you will. It doesn't mean I don't agree with them on many points. I do. But I will not be complicit in the degradation and the destruction of the human soul.
Yeah, that's I can take you on that point, and this is one of those. I mean, I don't know how you look like a young man, sir. I'm 20. I'm in my mid 20s.
Thank
You
you.
know, I'm evolving. I'm the first to admit to that. Um, do I identify with my body, my physical self? Not really. You know, I'm a white male, 27, like all that, married. But do I identify as any of these things? No. I identify with my ideas, and I identify with my beliefs, and I identify with freedom, my level of freedom. Is it complete freedom? No. Who has that? God. But I only have an umpteenth degree of that freedom. And am I okay with people ruling over me at this point? Would I rather have it not so? Yes, I would rather have it not so. But am I okay with it? Uh, no, I feel like I've been raped in the ass for a long enough time. I've been done everything I can do to be independent fiscally and retire at an early age, and it's upset me to a great degree. No matter how high you evolve in the chain, even if you're promoted to the next hierarchy of beings in the angelic realm, you still have to be reporting to somebody. The concept of authority is not going to go away anytime soon. I think the sooner the better. But
Hmm.
isn't everybody ready for that? Definitely not. You know, it's the who do you impress? Who do you impress at that point? That's a huge question. And then it just becomes a whole bunch more questions from there. This philosophy, this mechanism, this government monster, we've at least figured out the nuts and bolts. That's why we're so scared to let it go. And I don't think it will be let go anytime soon. It will be like Enron. It's going to be an oil giant that fails again, keeps getting bailed out, and eventually the people are going to flip on it and close it down. And it's just waiting around for that to happen. And it's a question of what part of the agenda do you want to be on? Do you want to be the manipulated sheeple that got fucked over and you had no idea it was coming, or would you rather be the part of the soul that was ambitious but on a self journey? It's like the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. He's ambitious, he's on a chivalrous journey, he's got the warrior spirit instilled in him. He's okay to cut a guy's head off for fucking with his line of kings, his philosopher king, so to speak. I'm all for it, man. Have a philosopher king class, and you know, innocent people are innocent to a degree. But I've emailed people. I've interviewed people in Afghanistan. I've interviewed people in America, all ignorant. There's a whole lot of ignorance. My friends are full of ignorance, spiritual ignorance, I'm talking. And they don't place themselves first, and that's a problem. That's something I was raised as an only child. I was born with myself first. That's all I know. And that's given me great mental power over other people because I've actually researched into the psyche and explored into the depths of myself. So I don't really identify with the rest of the humans. I would say that the ignorance itself is such a sin that your sin. I haven't seen the video. I'm gonna check it out after we disconnect.
Hmm.
Your intellectual arrogance as a sin, but I don't think it's the highest sin. I can't agree that that it's the highest sin because you know why? Because those intellectual sinners are at least taking action. They're taking action on their plans and killing a whole lot of people's minds. And they're doing it precisely, methodically. And it seems like they're looking for a few more people who want to be in the loop, who are gifted enough to see the what's going on, to join them. Like, why is that such a bad thing to be an elitist? You know, you kind of have to have that mentality when you want to join a circle of intellectually knowledgeable not superior, sorry, intellectually knowledgeable people about these things. You have to hold yourself in high regard. You have to have some form of arrogance to believe in yourself enough to practice what you preach and preach what is good. And if you're talking good things and you believe with full conviction in the words you say because it is aligned with truth, the higher power, everyone else who's full of lies and ignorance and psychic garbage that I've already cleared out of my way. Like I've done it. Other people can do it. What's so like? Come on,
Yeah.
it's the price of a book. It's 99 cents at the used bookstore. Get a job. You pick up some garbage in Africa. You can make that much. Don't eat so much and grab a book and drink some tea. Go on a fast. Be like Jesus. You deal with your situation is what I'm trying to say. And
Mhm.
there's plenty of people that in America and in the West especially, and I know in Afghanistan and in the Middle East they don't do anything. They sit at their house all day, read no books. They're the most intellectually stupid, ignorant society I've ever seen. But when you look at their education from 40 years ago, completely different. They learned astrology. They have an education of 5 languages: Persian, Farsi, Dari, English. All of our interpreters spoke at least 5 languages in military intelligence. And they were also astrologers and mathematicians. They learned astronomy in school. And I'm just like, what happened with that education system? Do you know anything about that?
Well, what happened with the Arabic world was a complete and utter hostile takeover by a certain Turkish sect, if you like. And this was prior to the Ottoman Empire surfacing. And they eradicated, step by step, every little bit of advancement that had been made by the Arab world. That's what happened to it in a nutshell. And it got progressively worse as the agenda marched forward. And it was this same small clique, this same small group of Turkish nomads, which actually ended up conquering most of Western Europe. They ended up settling over time in Bavaria in Germany, which is where these other families branched off from. They have posed as Jews, as Muslims, as Christians, and most of these ideologies they themselves erected. This is something I went into depth with slightly in the second half of the podcast that I did with Michael and David. So,
Right, right. But
this is very much how the Arab world collapsed. It was not because they themselves were mentally incompetent originally. They have become so. They have become indolent. They have become accepting of their own enslavement, and therefore that's part of the reason why they are enslaved so easily by corrupt leaders in their own geographical regions, if you will, as well. Having said that, I don't think it's necessarily the case that education, in the sense that we understand it today, right, that education is the be all and end all of intellect or of wisdom. See, wisdom consists many times of doing, and it's very much about your own actions, more so, I would say, than any sort of given educational understanding.
yeah, and Michael, I know you're pressed for time. What can you tell me about Operation Talpiot out of Israel?
That was Operation Talpiot is something that is oftentimes quoted and oftentimes misunderstood because the real agenda. I have to be honest about this. I've only seen one person, and this was on Twitter. I've only seen one person actually nail it bang on and be able to say exact. And this was somebody who actually did work for one of our sister intelligence agencies in France. But that's the only person that's been able to tell me or to tell. Well, yeah, that's the fundamentals of it. Not a whole lot of people know what is going on with that. They straight away jump into this as a Jewish conspiracy. It's all of Israel. The Zionists only exist in Israel. It's Mossad. It's this and that. They haven't got the first sodding clue. Okay, the reality is that Talpiot is not where people's focus actually should be. It's a part of it, but that's not where the focus should be. What they should be looking at, the two countries they should be looking at right now, the capitals they should be looking at, are Moscow and Beijing. Because as it emerged just a few days ago, most of the people that people class as Zionists and this and that, and oh, it's the Jews, it's the crypto Jews, these people worked for the Soviet intelligence agencies.
So did half of the Mossad.
Correct. They had intricate links with absolutely,
Have
absolutely.
you read the book Operation Talpiot on Amazon?
I have not, no.
Okay. Let me know. I'll give you my login info. You can read it for free. But yeah, that's a good. It's a piece of literature that's actually it's something I was exposed to for the first time. And when I traced the names of the professors who were involved in the establishment of that program, that 10-year long uh, program, um, at least 10 years, obviously. That's the minimum
Yeah.
sentence commitment, service commitment. What I found was that it was well done. I traced all of those guys back to University of Tel Aviv, University of Belgium, University of Basel, University of. They're all professors located throughout the U.S. Some of them I couldn't locate, but I still give credence to the book. And some of the guys were businessmen, and it was almost like what they said made sense. And it seems like if Russia's doing it, America's doing it. So I'm sure if there's a book about this, the U.S. military is involved. The foreign military services, MI5, MI6, are involved. And there's probably these programs going all over. My question is, how do I get enrolled into one?
Well, this is the big question, isn't it? But one of the big issues, I think, and this is why I try and I do my best to try and dissuade people from having a certain type of mindset, which is to become one of the elite. And the reason behind that is because I've walked those corridors of power and I know exactly how the system functions inside and out. What I can say is that you don't get into any of these upper echelons, these inner workings, if you like. I could talk about stuff to do with the White Room. I could talk about stuff to do with a whole series of things that nobody would grasp. It would go over most people's heads, right? But the majority of these little cliques, if you like, function on the basis of blackmail. You have to have a little dirt on you for them to trust you.
That's what the White
And
Room is?
in a way, yes. It's a secret vault system.
I've seen it in movies,
That's why they put it in movies as well. There is a lot to that. Again, that is something I cannot speak about publicly.
Mm.
But what I can tell you is that that is very real. And what happens is that
and you just think of the scope of that. I mean, you have Snowden's program, for example. For anyone listening in the future, they have you have Snowden's scope of program, and then you think of what's not released, like the scope of what they have now. That was 4 years ago. The speed of the quantum chip quadrupling every year. The speed of satellites doing the same, and you have to consider to what degree is this White Room, and as a and I'm sure you can't comment on that, but I don't expect you to. But my questions as a philosopher and questioner of surveillance in the state that we live in is to what degree that's at. Do they have information on me when I look at porn on my computer? At least they're overage, and all of those concerns go into question, and it's the thought police basically is what you're saying. And that's the harsh reality that unfortunately a very small percentage of human beings today give attention to, because if they did, we would definitely see more transparency than we do today. But unfortunately, that's just not the case, and it's kept that way for a reason. Michael, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I mean, we jumped into the quantum, we jumped into uh, government, and we jumped into how to keep yourself away from the white room by not watching adult videos.
Quite
For
right,
all
quite
your
right.
friends out there, and it's just very fascinating, man. It's great to talk to you today.
Likewise, likewise. Take good care of yourself and do keep in touch.
You too, Michael. When do you think we can talk again?
It depends on my schedule. Right now, it's a little bit all over the place
Did
because my weeks are literally packed.
Yeah.
But hopefully by November, the end of November, maybe December, I should have some free time that I can block out to catch up with people.
Okay, man. Well, I'll keep in touch. Do you respond? Did you get my email, by the way? It was bro. I know.
I'll need to check. I don't check in with my public emails that often, I must say,
Okay.
and I don't give out my personal email.
So just the Patreon website. I could communicate with you best through that, I guess.
Primarily, probably yes, and if I can, I'll definitely get back to you as soon as is possible.
Okay, very good. And what
Okay.
is the link for that again? For your Patreon website?
Uh, um, I don't have it to hand here, but you should
www.patreon.com
patreon.com forward
slash
slash.
Michael Black. Oh,
I think it,
and last question: would you ever consider doing a podcast with Adam Burkhart from Unslaved? He's a young guy. He does the movies commentary on the Prisoner series, and I was thinking, you do a lot of dichotomies, like you did morality versus nihilism.
mhm.
And I have to say, I'm a nihilist. I'm slowly coming out of my shell, and you're helping to do that. Mark Passio is helping to do that. But that's what 25 years of narcissistic programming and army programming does to someone. It makes them a complete narcissist dog, and it's been a journey out of that bubble. And thank you for having me come out of the shell. But to bring up dichotomies, do you think you could do more versus videos in the future? This versus that. It seems like your descriptions are very good, and I was thinking of even movies and religion, or
I might delve into that a little bit more over time. Yeah, there's definitely topics that I want to go more in depth with on that front. Just these dialectical relationships, really, which is what they are, between various phenomena and various ideas. Uh, yeah, I'll probably end up doing that anyway. So, yeah.
Okay, Michael, take it easy. Look forward to
Thanks
talking
very
with
much
you
for
in
your time.
November. See you.
Bye now.